Hello, everybody, and welcome along. I'm going to start that again because you glitched.
It's all right.
It's all right. Hello, everybody, and welcome along to episode 9 of season 3 of the A Game of Two Halves podcast. I'm your host, Sean Watson. Joining me once again is Kieron Dobson. Kieron, welcome along. How are you?
I'm good. Again, thank you for asking, Sean. How are you?
Good, thank you. Yeah, not too bad at all. It's been it's going to be a little bit of a busy period, so we're going to try and discuss the clubs that we haven't really discussed too much so far on the podcast this week. That's going to be our focus a little bit. We've talked City and Liverpool till we're blue and red in the face, I suppose, if you want to chuck a pun in there. But so we're going to try and dedicate the first half of this programme to the lesser mentioned teams, I suppose, if that's all right with you.
Yeah, good. All good with me. Like you say, I think it is easy to talk about City and Liverpool. They've dominated the last few years, but they're not right now. So do they deserve the pedestal? Probably not.
No, definitely not. And teams like Leicester, teams like Southampton, and even teams down at the other end of the table deserve to be talked about. So that's where we're going to place our focus this week. Any particular place do you want to start? We said we talked Sheffield United in the second half.
Again, I've stolen jokes off you for the last 2 weeks, but something you pointed out we probably should discuss on the podcast this week. Probably good to get it done at the outset is just to say rest in peace, Gerard Houllier, and
Absolutely, yeah.
What a man he was.
Absolutely. Sad news about Gerard Houllier, of course, passing away this morning as we record this podcast. I think he was 73. Long-time manager of Liverpool in the late 90s and early 2000s. I think he started off as co-manager with Roy Evans, didn't he, at Liverpool?
I think it was the end of that period that he stepped in.
I think so. I think they were co-managers for a season and then it didn't work, so they moved Evans on and kept Houllier.
Yeah.
And obviously went on to have, a lot of success with Liverpool, winning a version of the treble. I'm not going to go all out and say it was the definitive treble, but, it was the cup treble.
Treble, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was the cup treble, wasn't it? It was the FA Cup, the League Cup, and the UEFA Cup. It was, and look, nobody's done that since in English football, so it deserves its place in Liverpool history and definitely English football history. And he was a manager who seemingly understood the Liverpool fans, probably as good as any other manager they've had in the last 20 or 30 years, wasn't he?
Yeah, I mean, you could maybe say Klopp being the only one that comes to. I know you could say as well about Rafa some of the charity work he's done for Liverpool and obviously how much he was touched by Hillsborough. But I think, again, you have to give credit to Houllier for really starting that. I mean, it's easy to forget just how few foreign managers there were in the game until, the late 90s. And he came in the early 2000s. And Liverpool, I think he's probably the first foreign manager of Liverpool. I might be wrong there.
No, I think you're right. I think before that it was Souness, Roy Evans, and then Houllier. So
yeah, and I consider Scotland to be part of Britain still. So I think it's possible it stays that way. But yeah, so I think, like I say, one of the first foreign managers, and like I say, he took the city to his heart, and I think the fans did too. And he had a bigger impact on the game than just at Liverpool. Obviously, he stayed in the Premier League after that. I think he had a spell at Villa, didn't he? But before that, his impact on French football was there. But also, I think we should be thankful for him because I don't think we wouldn't be maybe it wouldn't even be a podcast today if it wasn't for Gerard Houllier, because if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't have got Eric Cantona and
absolutely
who knows what United looked like there and then. So
yeah, the story goes that Houllier recommended Cantona to Alex Ferguson, who took him from Leeds. I think Houllier had dealings with Cantona in French football before he'd come over to England and join Leeds. So as you say, if Cantona hadn't joined United, things hadn't gone the way they have done for United over the past 20, 30 years. We might not be sat here today recording a podcast centred around, half of it's around Manchester United. So, I suppose we have got Houllier to thank for that, and it's a sad loss, isn't it?
Yeah, no, again, I think you see some of the... I always talk about that Limmy tweet every time someone dies. Met him at a charity do once. He was down to earth and very funny in capitals. But, you can see across the footballing spectrum, not just from ex-Liverpool players and fans, but, I think Ferguson was always complimentary about him as well, saying that he was one of football's greatest gentlemen or something. I think that was a quote that he said about him.
Yeah.
He's very well regarded in the game. And, football will be feeling his loss. And yeah, sad day for him, his family, and for football.
Let's talk about his probably most famous former club. Let's talk Liverpool to start then. We'll talk Liverpool and Fulham. We will sort of encapsulate Fulham into that because they haven't had too much coverage on this podcast so far. 1-1 draw yesterday, and Liverpool, fair to say, were lucky to get out of there with a point.
Yeah, no, Fulham were the better team. Deserved the point, but I mean, they would have deserved 3 had they got them. We'd have all said, well done. They really got at Liverpool's defence, and I think it's about time, because I was obviously one of the people that was hoping that Liverpool defence would look as shaky as it did in that last game without Van Dijk, and obviously Trent's just come back, but he's not 100%, and they're without Gomez at the minute. But yeah, no, a lot of questions asked that defence. I think some of the late signings they made at the end of the window, Fulham, have really landed on their feet pretty well. I know Lookman missed that Rabona, and that could have easily led to him, having a difficult period. But I mean, he seems to have come through that.
Oh no, the Panenka.
Sorry.
I mean, that would have been something else, wouldn't it, if he'd gone for the Rabona from a penalty? But yeah, no.
That would have been quite the flair. A Rabona Panenka, would have been pushing out. But no, it would have been easy for that because it was a London derby, even though we have about 10 of them every year. But he's come through. Loftus-Cheek's look good, but I think more importantly for Fulham, they look pretty solid defensively now. That I can't say his name, Adebayo, the young centre-back they signed, and his name escapes me now, the centre-back I believe they got from Germany. I should get his name shown.
Is it Robinson?
I'm not even going to guess.
I'm just going to check it.
It's a son, but...
I feel like it's Robinson. I'm just going to check it. But yeah, the defence for Fulham yesterday were pretty... Joachim Anderson.
Yeah, number 5, excellent performance from him as well. And that's really shored them up, because the 2 centre-backs they had prior to those 2 moves were the 2 that went down with Fulham last time in the Premier League. They weren't good enough. Was it Ream and Duff?
Yeah, Tim Ream, wasn't it? That's right.
And then they're not... And I don't want to say anyone, but they weren't quite out for this level. But that pairing looks much safer, and Fulham look like a team with a plan. They've looked better since the window's closed, let's put it that way. So fingers crossed this can be a turning point for them until we play them. Also, actually, one last thing I'll say about that is rest in peace, Papa Bouba Diop. And
of course. Yeah.
Hopefully that was a result for him and his family. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was terrible news when we got that last week. I think it was 42. I always remember him scoring the goal against us at Loftus. I think it was Loftus Road, maybe Craven Cottage at the time. But yeah, outstanding player. He got his rose to fame scoring for Senegal in the World Cup, I think, in 2002. So yeah, another sad loss. It's been a bit of a dark period for football the past couple of weeks with all the deaths we've had. Really, it's a sad time. But yeah, Fulham deserve every credit, absolutely. And obviously with the lead singer of the Streets in charge, they've got have you seen the memes and stuff?
Yes, I have. Yeah.
Scott Parker's lexical choices and the way he talks and speaks in his accent. If you've not seen it, very reminiscent of... I don't know what the lead singer of the Streets is called, actually. Do you know?
Mike Skinner.
Yeah, that's right. Mike Skinner, that's right.
Big fan over here, by the way.
Oh, really?
So, yeah. I think it was over We Become Heroes, and it was layered so perfectly.
His cadence is spot on. I think there was one from the playoff final or the semi where he's talking like that. It's about getting in and coming in and on Sunday, and we just got to pick ourselves up, and then it's just absolutely perfect. So if you've not seen it, go and check that out. It's superb. But it was a sweet moment for Parker as well, taking points off Liverpool, especially after Jamie Carragher's words that they looked dead and buried after 3-4 games. And I think we probably said the same. But I suppose that would have been quite nice for Parker himself to sort of silence the Liverpool criticism a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think Klopp meant any disrespect when he sort of gave him the backhanded compliment of saying, nice looking club, nice looking manager. But, you easily taken out of context, you can interpret it that way. And because I think a lot of people look at Fulham like that. The stadium's cute, nice white kit. No one hates them. They're sort of very inoffensive. And we talk about that quite a lot with some of the other teams. But yeah, no, just to go toe-to-toe with Liverpool and be the better team. They are the champions, and yes, they've got injuries, but still a lot of talent in that squad. And, I appreciate there's a lack of fitness there, but really the only main couple of players you missing was Van Dijk and who would be the other one? It was
Van Dijk and Gomez.
Yeah. So obviously Fabinho drops in, and again they're two big misses, but Fulham, Liverpool might well have rested one of those players anyway if they were all fully fit against Fulham. So, credit to him. It's a big result. The only thing I'd say about Liverpool is I watched that performance and I just thought they looked knackered. Like they were second to every ball. They did not look sharp. They've got Spurs midweek this week. If I was a Liverpool fan, I'd be beginning to start to worry a little bit about what that's going to mean. I think we've got 6 games in the next 3 weeks. And if they're not looking sharp right now, and if, they're lacking in any way fitness-wise, and they've run out of whatever caffeine syrup it is that they inhale there, then, I don't know, maybe it's time for me to get excited. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but...
Could we say the same about a lot of the top-end teams, I suppose, that played in Europe, especially the Champions League?
Yeah. City included.
Yeah, we'll get to United and City in the second half, of course. But United and City both looked a little bit jaded in the derby on Saturday. Chelsea obviously didn't look at the best against Everton. Spurs dropped points at Palace. It's catching up a little bit, isn't it?
Yeah, it definitely is. I just think that the one thing... There's 2 things I'd say that are different for Liverpool. One is they're defending champions, so they're going to be wanting to win the trophy again. And the second thing I think is that I think everyone would agree Liverpool's first 11 is probably the best in the league, and they have improved from a depth perspective. when they're fully fit, we're not talking about players that didn't start today on the weekend. Thiago, Keita, if he ever does get fit again, but there's another body there. But what I would worry about if I was Liverpool now is that Trent just come back from a pretty serious injury pretty soon, rush straight back in. Van Dijk, we've already seen the pictures of him in trade, and it looks like as soon as he's back fit, they'll bring him straight back in. I understand that in one respect, but you wouldn't, if you're a Liverpool fan, you wouldn't want to see them rush them back too soon and risk them getting injured again, because you're going to want them at the end of the year, and particularly, if you get to the last stages of the Champions League. So I think that's the one difference for them. City have got a slightly deeper squad, and the drop off from their first 11 isn't as severe as it is for Liverpool. I think that's the difference, really. Liverpool play a high octane game, don't they? It's very intense. There's a lot of running, high demands of the players. If they're not quite hitting that, then some of those marginal gains that they make, by just running that extra 10% in terms of distance covered, or being that little bit quicker, or having that extra little bit of quality, and then some of those things start to fall off. Then some of those narrow wins they got last year, I think they got 12 where they won by 1 goal. Some of those will start to turn into draws, and potentially some of those draws turn into losses. So again, they'll probably be fine.
They'll stay up, you think?
Say again?
They'll stay up, you think?
Yeah, no, I think they'll compete still, but watching that game on the weekend did tickle me. Let's put it that way.
It's gonna be a close league, isn't it? I mean, I'm looking at the table now as we speak, and the top 9 are separated by 6 points. You got City in 9th on 19, with a game in hand on Spurs, and Liverpool on the top on 25. So, after 12 games, generally the normality of a season says that you're starting to see the league take some shape. Yeah, you're starting to see the top 3 or 4 separate themselves from the pack. It's not happening, is it? It's not happening this season so far. We've still got the likes of, and I don't mean this with any disrespect, but West Ham, Southampton, Everton are up there in the mix in the top 6 or 7. They do, and they're there on merit, of course they are, but they probably won't stick around. But they're there later than you'd expect them to be. When Southampton went to the top of the league after 4 games, everybody probably went, great, good for them, it won't last another game or 2. But, they're 4th, 2 points behind. So they deserve credit as well, don't they? And the likes of Leicester, again, they've been a solid team for the past 5-6 seasons. And they're a point behind as well. So these teams now, the gap seems to be a lot closer this season between those teams you'd normally put 8th, 9th, 10th in the table and the top 4 or 5.
100%. And again, I think if I sound optimistic about Liverpool dropping off, it's because I think that they're still going to come above all those teams you mentioned, but the fact that they're not being, and again, I appreciate they've had it worse in terms of the injuries so far, but that aside, they also don't look like they're about to turn a corner any quicker. Again, I would be really concerned by how just off the pace they looked against, what is not a great Fulham team. I think, again, not to talk too much about FPL, but I imagine that their Liverpool players were all the most transferred in going into that fixture. Everyone was expecting a lot of goals for Liverpool. So
who did you captain?
Say again.
Did you captain Salah?
I captained Jota, who didn't play, but only because he was the only one I could afford. But that again, but that says something. I wouldn't usually captain that type of player, but playing Fulham,
because it was against Fulham.
Well, one thing I will say though, you mentioned all those clubs. Leicester now have been 2 years where they've been, in the top 5-ish zone, floating there. Southampton joined in now. Everton look really good, and they're there at the minute.
Yeah, they've been a little bit patchier than the other teams, I'd say.
But Coleman got injured. Digne got a ban, then injured.
Richarlison.
Yeah, they're three of I think, the most important players in terms of like the way they play under Ancelotti, because he's a player-based manager. He looks at the squad and then decides this is how we're going to play with this squad. Digne and Coleman and Richarlison will have been key to that setup. I think the only one more important would have been Halves, but they're still in that mix. There's nothing to say they won't keep in that region. Ancelotti's a really good manager. What I wanted to say about it was, I know we talked about them last week, but Arsenal now, they've not only fallen outside of the top 4 discussion, they're not in the Europa League discussion anymore, really. I know they're in the Europa League this year. I know they won the FA Cup last year, so maybe I'm being a bit premature, but
as of right now,
there's a lot of squads right now that I would not swap to take on Arsenal's squad. If I had Southampton's squad, I wouldn't be rushing to take on Arsenal's squad. If I had Everton's or Leicester's squad, I would not be thinking, yeah, do you know what? There's some holes, but they've got Aubameyang. I would be looking at that squad and thinking, do you know what? I think we've got a better squad than them. And
yeah, I would as well. And we said off air that we wasted giving Arsenal some coverage last week. We should have saved it for this week. Because again, I know another home defeat against Burnley. I mean, that is almost as bad as it can get, isn't it? Surely.
Yeah, I mean, if only because Burnley have had a really poor start to the season. Typically speaking, you'd say it's a difficult game, but this year they've looked really poor.
Yeah.
And going into this weekend, I did fear for Arsenal a little bit just because it would just be just like Sean Dyche to go and get a result, playing a bit nasty, a little bit in your face, defend well and be organised and hit them with a set piece or a counter, and that's what happened. And you could have seen it coming a mile off, except Arsenal didn't, or maybe there was no other way around it. But I mean, if they've not got the answers now, I mean, where are they coming from? Lacazette, Aubameyang were available. I don't know.
Is Arteta in some serious trouble now?
Have you seen the fixtures for the next few weeks?
I haven't. I've got to say.
It's worth talking about this then. So I'm just going to pull them up now. Arsenal.
Tough run.
Yeah. So they've got Southampton, then away at Everton, then home to City, then home to Chelsea.
Wow.
And that's Boxing Day, and then it eases up a little bit for them. The games come thick and fast then. If you lose those 4 games, it's conceivable. I
mean, easily conceivable. How many points do you expect them to take from those 4 games? They'd be happy with 3, right? 6 at absolute most.
I mean, yeah, I think so, because I mean, Chelsea and City look comfortably better than them.
Yeah.
Everton, Southampton.
Yeah, I mean, they're both in form.
I mean, yeah, exactly. So again, it eases up for them after that. They've got Brighton, West Brom, and then an FA Cup game against Newcastle. But if you go into that easier run in the new year after coming off a drubbing and you're 15th now, it's going to be really hard to look at Arteta's job and think, well, there shouldn't be a conversation to be had here.
To put you on the spot then, do you see Arteta still being in the job once they've got to the other side of that 4-game run after Boxing Day? Do you still see him in the hot seat at Christmas?
I think he'll be in the job, but only in physical form. I think they might make their mind up in this spell prematurely. And I have to say, I said last week that I would not overreact if I was Arsenal and I wouldn't panic. So this might sound a bit reactionary for me, but when you look at the gravity of their situation now, if they are going to be struggling to get out of the bottom 15 before the 2021, I mean, you can't spin it in any way, shape, or form. It's not good enough. And if you were to talk about they made definite progress when Arteta came in, but you look.
Was it just the new manager bounce though?
And that is so possible, isn't it?
It is, because how many times have we seen it? It's a cliche in itself, isn't it? The new manager bounce will come in, they'll get a decent 3-month spell, and then it reverts to type. It's not out of the realms of possibility, that.
No, 100%. I mean, what do you think? Do you think he stays?
I mean, is he worse off now than Unai Emery was 12 months ago?
Yes.
Yeah? So should he stay? Probably not.
It's not as though he's not had some money. I mean, record signing Partey. Well, not a record sign, but was for a midfielder for them. And
I'm always of the ilk that managers should be given time. I've got to say, I'm always backing. I've said about Solskjaer for the past 2 years, he needs 2 years minimum. I do agree. I'm going to say that he should be given to the end of the season.
Yeah. If it were up to me, I would choose to believe, as an Arsenal director or anyone that has to make this decision, I would choose to believe that he's worth sticking with. The squad just isn't that good. And I started this conversation by saying that I wouldn't swap Leicester's, Everton's, Southampton's squad for this Arsenal squad. And so it should be taken in that context. It's not to say they should be 15th right now. But, I mean, in fairness, those other clubs haven't had to play in the Europa League either. But, again, there's no excuses for being where they are. And I would just choose to believe that when we get the right players for him, and if he's from that Pep Guardiola school of thought, the way that he wants to play his football, then it will take time for him to get that particular type of player in. But again, I would be looking at and thinking, well, he got Gabriel, Aubameyang, he wanted to keep, and we signed a new contract there. He wanted to keep David Luiz, so we kept him for him. We've signed Partey, got a good young squad. He's come here for I would start. You reasonably have to start saying, well,
the goalkeeper's good as well. I rate Leno. I think he's a good goalkeeper.
Yeah, he had a tough start, I think, at Arsenal, but I have to say he has looked good, particularly since the injury. Because I know Martinez came in and looked much better than him. Period. But he's responded to that well, and he has looked more solid. And there are other players there you can feel good about, like Tierney's obviously not poor. There's a player there, maybe he'll develop into a player that actually starts to get assists and turn those crosses into something. Good young player in Saka, and Nketiah shows glimpses of being a poacher sometimes. But there's just nothing that you would say you'd be confident is going to stick for Arsenal right now, and I would fear big time for that. And again, if they sack Arteta, we've seen it before, they got rid of Wenger, they thought that was the issue, and I did too. I didn't think it was the be-all and end-all, but I thought it would help. Emery came in, there was a semi-turnaround, that confident mentality win against Spurs, and then that went south, and Arteta's come in, there's been a lot of promise, but if he doesn't deliver and they move on from him, it's going to be really tough to look at where they go from there.
What do you make of the Ozil situation? Because it's not massively dissimilar to where some people see the Pogba situation playing out. I hope it doesn't go down that road, but obviously a player of quality that we've seen from him in the past decade, I suppose. But what do you make of the whole scenario?
I think Ozil omitted him from the squad purely because of the financial aspect of it. I think that it's better for Arsenal that they don't have a player on that salary. I believe it's around £300,000 a week, which is a lot for any club in the world. But particularly Arsenal, who've been pretty structured in the way that they manage the salaries, the players. So I think they probably did want to shift him off the books, and I think that's the real reason he was left off, not because of his talent. I think you could easily get into that squad on talent ahead of at least 5, maybe 10 players that you will get in. But I will say, much as I rate Ozil, and I was, there was a time in my life I was absolutely obsessed with Mesut Ozil. He was one of my favourite players at one point. I remember watching him play for Werder Bremen in a UEFA Cup game against, I think it was Schalke, or it was another German team. He was stunning. Real Madrid signed him the summer after, and I was gutted we didn't go for him.
Rooney said we should have got him. Rooney went into Ferguson, didn't he?
He's right, but well, I thought he was right. But you look at it now, and the game it's everybody knows that if you're going to be a number 10 in the modern era, these days you have to be a bit more responsible in terms of the amount of running you need to do for the team. You need to track runs. You need to
put the legwork in.
Yeah,
it's more than just being on the ball now, isn't it?
Yeah, and he's excellent on the ball, and in terms of like the little touches and the one-touch passes and the way he can break defence down, and again the impact he can have for set pieces, I'm sure he would help Arsenal a great deal right now. But with that said, I don't blame Arteta for thinking, he's on a lot of money. The sooner he leaves, the better. We need to give him a little push because really and truly, I mean, I think he's 30, 31, but he's old for that. Whatever age he is, he looks older. He's never ever really shown a desire to be a player who's maybe he just hasn't got the athleticism to do all that running, but he's never looked like he wanted to really try and track back and do some of the dirty work that I think the modern era you just sort of have to accept you've got to do.
I agree. What do you think Roy Keane would make of Ozil if United had signed him?
It depends, doesn't it? Maybe we'd have built a team around him in the way that we sort of have around Bruno. Bruno does do the dirty work, so I'm not saying, but he's got a lot more desire to try and win the ball back. But then he does give the ball away more than Ozil. Maybe if we'd have, built a team to support him and make up for some of those, maybe he'd be saying, he's a really good, talented player. But yeah, I'm trying my very best here. He wouldn't like him, would he?
He'd be hesitant at best, wouldn't he? Let's put it that way.
I'm trying to think though, he wouldn't have, if he was a Real Madrid fan, he wouldn't have minded Mesut Ozil at Real Madrid because he was excellent. I mean,
no. If he's scoring goals and providing assists,
if Ozil played for City, where they do tend to control the possession more and there's less to do off the ball, maybe he'd be perfectly fine. But
yeah,
if you're not at a club that has 60-70% possession, then and you're not willing to run backwards at all, then.
But that's partly why people thought he'd fit at Arsenal, because Arsenal have always been a possession-heavy team, haven't they? So, and it hasn't really panned out the way. They're not anymore, and that's the trouble, and that might be the issue. We're coming to the end of the first half, but we'll just quickly mention, I think they do deserve a mention, Southampton, under Ralph Hasenhuttl. So we mentioned him a little bit earlier in the season when, what a good result that's looking like now. United turning them over 3-2 after being 2-0 down. That looks better and better by the week, doesn't it? But how impressed have you been by Southampton and their start?
I've not been particularly blown away by them. I think they've just been a really steady ship, and they've got a good coach and a good squad, and they've got a few key players, where obviously they've been without Danny Ings, and they've seemed to have managed that, and he's just come back, and again, he's had an impact straight away. If he can get fit and stay fit again for the rest of the year, I mean, that was huge from last year. His goals. They will need him for the year if they want to stay in the top 7, 8. And last year was the outlier, but I do hope that he can stay fit because he seems like a good guy. By all accounts, he's done a lot. Every club he's at, he does a lot for the grassroots game in that city. I got a lot of time for Danny Ings. I really hope he stays fit. But yet, no, I can't say they've surprised me massively. I do think, it's more to do with the fact that the rest of the teams have dropped off. But again, they've been steady and they do deserve credit because they look, they're a high-intensity team as well, like Liverpool, and they seem to have navigated it. Again, they hadn't had to worry about Europe, and that must have helped. But again, they seem to have navigated it pretty well, and yeah, good team. Got a lot of players that I like that don't play. I really, 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 really love watching that Moussa Djenepo.
Yeah, he's good, isn't he?
Yeah, technically, but I wonder whether he's a bit top heavy in terms of his talent. Maybe he's not as tactically as switched on as he maybe needs to be. But I think he's with the right manager, maybe to develop in that respect.
Yeah, absolutely.
Southampton, everyone likes them.
Friendly enough, aren't they? Just to put you on the spot, then. I mean, we've said that the table's not really taking much shape. I'm putting you on the spot and asking you to call your top four here. Do you think we'll get a surprise package in the top four, or will it eventually iron itself out and go the way people thought it would in terms of City, Liverpool, United, Chelsea, for example?
I think on the spot that it will be four familiar teams in the top four, but I just don't think they'll necessarily be in the order we would usually expect, if that makes sense.
That's fair.
I don't think Everton, Leicester, or Southampton break in. I just think it will be the same names that, obviously they've interchanged a bit, but it will just be, they'll be in a weird order that we're not used to. Obviously, the last 2 years, City and Liverpool dominating. It could so easily be the case that they do click or flick a switch or make the right move in January, and they're able to find their gear and cruise home. But, that's a question. I'm excited to find out. I think this year is a real unknown.
It is, isn't it?
Until Liverpool start to convince people, there's no reason to believe that, there's a lot of reason to doubt that they were going to be anywhere near as good this year. They've played 2 high-intensity years. I think I've talked on this podcast about the cycling down theory, which a lot of people think would take hold, and it seems to have so far. City, I think, should do better than last year, but it's just a question of, how good that is, because they were poor for themselves last year. Because they relied too much on Kevin De Bruyne, and he's not that good. I'm joking.
We will get to Kevin De Bruyne and the Manchester derby with Kieron Dobson in the second half. But stick around for that and all of this. Welcome back to the second part of tonight's A Game of Two Halves podcast. In this half, we'll be discussing all things Manchester United, including the Manchester derby, the unfortunate exit from the Champions League last week at the hands of Leipzig, and the upcoming fixture schedule, which looks to be a little bit congested. I think it's fast run of games in a short period of time. So we'll be getting to all of that. But I think probably the place we have to start is our predictions, because we published last week's podcast after the Leipzig game, but we'd made our predictions before the Leipzig game. So we looked a little bit daft, saying that hopefully we'll be coming to you next week having seen United progress through with a nice comfy win in Leipzig. Didn't happen, Kieran. Why didn't it happen?
I don't know.
You said you were happy. You said you were happy with the performance.
Yeah, no, sorry, I'm just processing the fact that you called them predictions. I never predicted we'd win 5-0.
No. Maybe that's the wrong word.
Yeah, no, but I get it. No, I was probably one of the few people I knew who wasn't as angry about the performance and the result. You were coming with a lot of heat. I had a lot of other people. Yeah. I watched the game with my brother, who's like forever a pessimist when we're not 3-0 up, and all the mates who were angry about some of the decisions that we'd made over the last, 2 games, include the PSG game and that. And my take, I think, was always that, if we're not going to qualify, it'll be because of the night in Istanbul. And so I was angry then. It's pointless now. I didn't expect to get any more than 3 points against PSG and Leipzig, and I don't think we should. I was disappointed we went out. Obviously, I think it will really hit me, to be honest, when we have that first Europa League game. And you see the draw today. We've got
Real Sociedad, yeah.
I'll be honest, I paid no attention to La Liga, but after James mentioned that they're top of La Liga at the minute because they've got David Silva, now I'm a little bit...
Yeah, to all accounts.
And Januzaj as well, I think.
Januzaj, absolutely, yeah. They're in form. They look the form side so far. Trust United to get that really difficult Europa League draw. Arguably, City's Champions League draw is easier than our Europa League draw. That's how it works. Mönchengladbach again for, I think, the 3rd time in 5 seasons as it works out.
The Mönchengladbach Twitter post.
Yeah, I did see it, yeah.
Again, if you haven't, listeners, it's good stuff. No, but I was disappointed again to go out. Not to say that, I was delighted to lose 3-2 as a fan result in the end, wasn't it? But for me personally, I think just to explain where I am mentally, because I know there are times where I come across maybe a little bit bullish about United. And that is because
No,
sometimes say again.
I wouldn't say that.
Sometimes I do. Maybe not on this podcast, maybe because I'm trying to keep a lid on it. But there are times privately with other people that I'll say some ridiculous things. I think I've done it off the recording with you.
Yeah.
But deep down, I am a bit of a realist, and we shouldn't be expecting to necessarily get to that stage of the Champions League every year. And I don't think that was necessarily what people are disappointed we didn't do. But I'm not massively surprised that a team that has been in and out of the Champions League every year has gone out of a tough group in the first in the group stage, and I'm not particularly surprised that we've lost at Leipzig because we know they're a really good team. They're banging form at the minute, and the 5-0 loss to us was a blip. So I wasn't particularly surprised. I was just disappointed, and but with that said, I was pleased that on the night we didn't give in. We played until the very last minute. We were fighting to make the comeback, and as long as we're doing that, as long as we're trying to, with every fighting breath, win a game or get a result, I'm okay really with United. And I have to say it's a low bar, but I've watched 7 years United fall below it. So to now actually be in a position where I actually like the players and they're really trying their absolute utmost, then as a fan, that's enough for me, to be honest.
I definitely get that. I think, like you say, the result was the one in Istanbul, and like you say, I agree with you that looking at it from an objective standpoint from the beginning of the season, looking at that group, if you'd have said to me, you'll miss out on, I think it was the head-to-head record with PSG, that's why we missed out. Ultimately, I'd have gone, well, all right, that's not disastrous. We've put up a good fight of it, but I said it last week, being in the position where we were after 3 games, we needed a point. What it worked out was to be a point. No, what was it? After 2 games, and went to Istanbul away. And if we win those 2 fixtures back to back, Istanbul away and back at Old Trafford, we'd progress. So to not progress from that position is a real point of disappointment for me, ultimately. And as you say, United did fight to the end, absolutely, and that is commendable. And but it's almost the hope that kills you, isn't it? Half of me was a little bit more disappointed that we got so close to clawing it back and still missing out. I mean, I can't be that annoyed. It was good to see a comeback and get behind the team again. But, if we'd have cruised out 3-0, I'd have been over it a lot sooner. But it took me another 20 minutes to come down off the hope of getting through. So, not that I can be angry at the team fighting, but I mean, we exchanged text straight after. I wanted a bit of a row. You weren't in the mood, which is fair enough. But I always get quite hot after games. I'm not the best person to speak to, but and you said you're happy with the performance, and yeah, losing 3-2 at Leipzig isn't a disgrace or a disaster, but I mean, being 2-0 down within the first quarter of an hour was a disaster. I can't dress it up in any other way. Playing 5 at the back to contain was, and we know 5 at the back doesn't have to be a negative setup, and sometimes it can be to counteract what the other team do, and the attacking wing backs, if they get it right, can be more of an attacking formation than a defensive one. But the 5 at the back, they looked it looked alien to them. It looked like they weren't used to playing it, and we saw them pull it off in PSG. But both times, I think, if I'm right about the 2019 lineup, Axel Tuanzebe was in that team, and especially the one in Paris this year. They played 3 specialist centre-backs as the three centre-backs. This year we had Luke Shaw as the 3rd centre-back. Clearly that's not good for him. He didn't play particularly well there. Him and Tellez were getting a little bit on top of each other. The second goal was a prime example of that. Luke Shaw went out to press. He wasn't back in the right position. Tellez had to tuck in, overload at the back post. Wan-Bissaka had probably his worst game in a United shirt, especially that first half. That ball going over the top of him every 2 minutes, the diagonal. So, yeah, it just wasn't good. That first half, it was just everything we didn't need. And we were out of the game without giving ourselves any chance to get into it, in my opinion. So that's where the disappointment lands for me. It's not the fact we were beaten. It's the fact that the way we were beaten, we didn't really get into the game.
No, you concede early goals. Obviously, you then, fight a losing battle almost, until, yeah. So, and again, to concede 2 early goals is disappointing, but I think Ollie pointed before the game, that Leipzig are a really unpredictable team. They is it a malleable squad? They can change the way they play according to, different, and they're not afraid to mix it up and play in different systems and have different, they might counter, but they might press, or they might, against us at Old Trafford that first half, they really controlled the ball and pressed us to death. And that wasn't the performance that we had in that first 15 minutes. And you don't know what you're going to get until you come up against them. I think, to be fair, Ollie's United have been a bit like that at times, but we went into that game with the 5 at the back, and I think it was a sensible strategy. But I think my main gripe going into that game was that I don't think there was an issue with Shaw at left centre back. I actually think he's really accomplished there, and I think that's actually a position where potentially he could be best. I also think that when we play that 3 at the back, Wan-Bissaka would actually be much better suited to being the right centre back rather than the right wing back.
I agree with that.
There's so many reasons. The cons of him playing the right wing back because he's not very good going forward and providing that width, but also the pros that he's excellent defensively, and it would be much more similar to him playing as a right back, playing that right centre back. But that was neither here nor there. I think the big difference between this 5 at the back and the other times we've gone 5 at the back is that Harry Maguire was in it. Whenever we played 5 at the back under Ollie, it's been because Maguire's not available, and so he's felt more comfortable having Lindelof as the centre, Shaw left centre back, and it'll either be Bailly or Axel as the right centre back. And I think the big difference when you do that is that when you've got Axel or Bailly in there, you've got that pace to recover, but also Harry Maguire, because he's so slow and immobile, when he's playing as the centre of that back 5, it's difficult for him to manage the offside line because he's beaten really easily by pace. And so I think that the second goal, I think, actually both goals, Wan-Bissaka
both came about the same way, didn't they?
Yeah, Wan-Bissaka rightfully came for criticism. He's too tight, and I have to think that was because he wasn't used to playing with Lindelof as that right centre back in a back 5, and a lot of people getting hot on him, particularly in the WhatsApp group with my friends, where they were focusing so much on a still where you've got Angelino, maybe 15, 20 yards wide of Wan-Bissaka, and then Wan-Bissaka's actually focused on Forsberg's run, because if the ball lands a yard shorter than where it does, which it easily could have, Forsberg's in, Lindelof's not catching him. So I sympathise with Wan-Bissaka because of that, and because again I do think that when we've played that back 5 and you're playing it with a really slow centre back, managing that it's worth saying as well, in that moment Lindelof's actually playing as the centre back because Maguire's gone to his old default position of playing left centre back, when really he should have been positioned much further across, which would have meant that Wan-Bissaka by default would have been further closer.
Oh yeah, it's never one person's mistake.
I agree that they did look to him, but I don't think that's because Ollie's not played 5 at the back and they shouldn't be comfortable. It's purely personnel for me, and I think when we're playing 2 games a week, which we've been doing for the most part for the last few months now, I can't really blame him for not having the time to drill that into them.
No, I agree. There is no time for training.
On the day, and it might have worked, and they might have all clicked, but it's one of those you got to take your risks sometimes. And he quit after the 2 goals. He could have stuck to it, but he didn't. He moved to the back 4, and we looked much more comfortable with Tellez pushing into midfield.
He still moved too late for me.
Yeah, but you're only saying that because they got 2 early goals. How many times have we seen a goal go in early and then the game actually, the other team doesn't dominate? If they didn't get, I appreciate they get the 2 goals, but if they don't score that second goal and we get into that game and the system was the right one, they just caught us out in one bad moment, then you're saying he's going to,
It didn't look like that though, did it? It didn't look like that. It looked like we were getting, the back 5 wasn't working and we were still getting overrun in the midfield.
Change once they got the goal as well. So you've got to wait and see what they do.
No, I know. I'm not saying 10 minutes in you need to switch, but I think even before half time, I think after half an hour, I could see it wasn't working. I think everybody probably could.
No, I hear me out. I sound like I'm being too defensive of Ollie, and I probably am. But the worst thing about Ollie as a United manager, and it's the worst thing, is that he can be a bit too stick in the mud. Sometimes he won't change. He's very hesitant to make subs. But by and large, he gets most of these things pretty on the money. There are outliers. The Fred yellow card against Bayern, which should have been a red. There are times where you say, he's made a rookie move, but let's not forget, this is a guy that was managing Mould 2 years ago, and has had a short spell at Cardiff. I'm not gonna overreact and say he's got to go, because he's made a few amateurish errors, but he's a young, inexperienced coach, and I don't doubt he'll learn from these moments. But by and large, I'm on board with a lot of the decisions he does make, and I think that the progress we've made has been steady. And I think the very fact that we were even in the Champions League this year is testament to the fact that he's been able to put together a squad with him, with one window last year. I'd say two, actually, because it really changed once we got Bruno. But he deserves credit for that, because we've had Van Gaal and Mourinho, who've got really good CVs, done everything in football, and struggle.
Yeah,
so he deserves credit. And again, it's really disappointing. But that was a tough group. I'm not going to get infuriated the fact that we went out like that. One other thing, because it was a point I was going to make I made on the night. I don't know if I went that deep with you, but it's worth remembering as well how young this squad is. Our most experienced player on the night was probably David De Gea, and then maybe Maguire. But then you're looking at maybe Pogba. The rest of that squad is 25 and under.
Mm-hmm.
And there's something to be said about, I remember United under Ferguson, when we had a young Rooney Ronaldo getting knocked out in the group stage of the Champions League, and in the first knockout round. It's not unheard of. When you've got a young squad, it takes experience being in those scenarios. It takes time. So I'm not worried about United from that perspective. I do think, on another night, if Greenwood takes his chance or puts in Rashford, who knows? It's about those those margins, isn't it? So
I think one thing that struck me as slightly odd was Luke Shaw had not played in a month. But Luke Shaw was the one moved to left back and Tellers was taken off, and then 10 minutes later he took Shaw off. That one, I know maybe he's trying to save Tellers' legs for the derby on Saturday.
But he didn't
play him. But he didn't play him.
Yeah,
exactly. So that was a bit weird. I didn't really understand that. And then to put Williams on 10 minutes after that, I didn't really understand the thinking there. He's had a bit.
Say that, Sean, but we scored 2 late goals and we nearly pressed and got the third. So Ollie 1, Sean 0.
Well, I know. It just struck me as a little bit weird. But
I appreciate it. I think what happened when we went to the back four, obviously he was shouting at Tellers in the first half to keep pressing higher and to play in the midfield and not. But that's not his game. He is a left back by nature, and I think given that we were going to have to be more offensive, Shaw is quicker than Tellers and is probably a bit safer defensively. So I think that was the logic there. I hear you though. We need goals. You'd think you want Tellers' crosses, but football, you do have to think about both halves.
No, I know. It just seemed a little bit odd to have 3 left backs on the pitch in the same in one game. And obviously he's come under for a little bit of stick for putting, I think it was Twanzebe and Fozzie Mensah on the last 2 substitutions. But they went and scored twice after that. I mean, I think that was more luck than judgment, in all honesty. And I think he was probably saving legs, wasn't he, for the derby? That probably did happen. Wan-Bissaka and was it Lindelof who came off?
Yeah, and again, I think it has to be said, Wan-Bissaka didn't have a good game. Lindelof, again, like you say, there's a massive game congestion issue going on now. Lindelof is our starting centre-back next to Maguire, whether some people like it or not. And they were going to try and hit us on the counter every time we attacked. We had to have quicker defenders. It's pretty simple to me.
True.
I think it's as simple as that. The idea that you just win a game or you got a better chance of scoring a goal than if you bring on a striker is...
I don't know. It's
I'm not saying... But there are people that do think like that, and you just think, why are we even trying to talk football then? Like, it's not that simple. You got a chance of winning it, coming and winning a late game by having another player in midfield than a striker. But again, when a team sets counter like Leipzig, you have to factor that in, otherwise you're dead.
No, 100%. But the argument when you're 3-0 down, maybe it doesn't matter if you lose 4 or 5-0. Do you know what I mean? Maybe it just. But anyway, that's by the by. We scored twice after that. What I mean is, he got criticism for those 2 subs, but I'm not going to jump on that bandwagon. All right, well, let's fast forward to Saturday, the Manchester derby. I've deliberately left less time to discuss the derby than we have spent discussing Leipzig because, in all honesty, there isn't too much to discuss. I know you sort of. We agree that it was a better game than people think, but I mean, entertainment-wise, it probably wasn't. Where do you stand on?
Yeah, it was poor.
For a neutral and for a football fan, to be honest. I mean, there is obviously the tactical side of it, which is interesting, but it's interesting to a point. At the end of the day, people want to see attacking football and goals, don't they? And that was anything but on Saturday. Why do you think that was?
I think we're trying to be a bit more conservative at home. I think we've been guilty over the last couple of years the last couple of years, 4 years back now, since Moyes came in. Teams knew there was a pressure on United to win at home. We'd go for it and we'd get caught in transition. And I think since that Spurs game, Ollie's made a concerted effort to concede less and be less vulnerable to the counter. And he's been successful at doing it. We've drawn more games than I think we would have had we just stuck to it. But I completely understand why he needs to change his narrative around we're really poor at home. Drawing to Chelsea, we should have drew to Arsenal, and drawing to City. They're 3 commendable results. There's nothing wrong with them. And I know, just because I know who we are over the last 2 years watching all these United, we'll be better in the away games there.
Yeah.
So we've got a good chance, I would say, of getting 4 points against one of City or Chelsea there. And again, you take that all day.
Was it also a case of Ollie not being able to lose this game in fear of his job?
I don't think so. I think the other aspect to it was that Pep respects Ollie now, having been beaten by him 3 times, because he played Fernandinho and Rodri as 2 defensive midfielders, and that's because he knows we can hurt them on the break, and that really did nullify us in that respect. But I thought on the day it was an even game. I think if anyone was going to sneak it, it would have been us, and I think that's fair enough. If we do that, then it means that teams have to open up a bit more against us because they've seen us do it. I just think it's about changing that narrative. I know it sounds simplistic to say. I do think when you go to Old Trafford, if you're manager of any club in the Premier League, you go and think, well, we'll just soak it up and hit them because they're vulnerable. And I think you have to kill that. And if it means we have to, Van Gaal went through this period too, and I do think it's necessary. We have to make it a difficult place to come and get a result. And if we can show that we can defend and we can grind out, and we'll happily take the point if it comes to it against these teams, then I think that's probably the way we need to go. We can't go into every game and think we're just gonna pelt them. I thought Ollie in a way went for it as well with the lineup personally.
The lineup was fine.
If they hadn't started Rodri and Fernandinho, we would have probably killed them on one of those counters. I think he chose to go toe to toe with them to an extent personally. The old Ollie would definitely have gone 5 at the back against any other team that would finish above United, and even others at times. He's done that, and that's a sign of him showing respect. But he went with 4, and I think that's him thinking, we are on this level now.
Well, that to me then makes me question even more why he chose 5 at the back against Leipzig. Because we both said we think he's going to go for 4. We've not played 5 at the back that often. We've played it the odd time. I think PSG away was the last time we played it.
It is us, and we do it when we counter. I get it. Leipzig needed the win, not us. We needed the draw, and so it's conceivable that we should set up on the counter. They got the early goal. It killed the game for us.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, both teams looked. I'm back to City and United now. Both teams did look tired. The intensity wasn't there. Maybe they both thought, a point's not going to hurt us at the end of the season. I don't know. It's a tough game to analyse, isn't it? It is.
I just thought it was. Sorry, I'm interrupting. I honestly just think it's as simple as it was a respectful game. They both managers and both squads knew what the other one could do. I think City, I genuinely, again, maybe I'm a bit too high on Ollie. I do think Pep does now respect Ollie and this United team, and he's lost. We beat them 3 times last year. I think in total, I think we've got 3 wins and a draw and 1 loss to Pep with Ollie. That might be wrong, but I think it's not far off that. It might be better than that. He's got a good record against him by hitting him with the pace on the counter, and Pep has to account for that, and he did by playing 2 defensive midfielders. Pep very rarely plays 2 defensive midfielders. No, very rarely. He will go, you could describe Gundogan as a defensive midfielder, but he's not. He is more box to box. He operates much more in the opposition half. But Fernandinho and Rodri, make no mistake, that their role is to break up play. The fact that he's had to do that shows that even with Martial out, Cavani out, Pogba on the play now, not happy, Donny not going to start, us looking a bit rusty and coming off that game on the Tuesday after Leipzig, still went into that game and thought, I'm going to have to drop one of my traditional, more attacking, more offensive-minded midfielders. I think that's a sign of respect from them. I think.
I agree.
If he goes into that game his usual way, I think we snatch it probably.
Well, we saw that happen twice last season, didn't we?
Yeah.
That happened twice last year, so he's obviously learnt his lesson, I suppose. What do you make of the criticism of Solskjaer for changing the system too much?
I don't buy it. Again,
there was a pass that I think Rashford played against City on Saturday that he didn't look, and he just assumed Greenwood would be on the right side.
That happens all the time.
But I think the wider point.
It's the same way every week, that.
No, that's one isolated incident. But I think the wider point is, it's muscle memory, isn't it? You get used to patterns of play. The more you play a system, you get used to somebody being. For example, Paul Scholes, he knew Bex would be hugging the touchline on the right side. Bex knew Gary Neville would be flying down the outside.
Sure.
No, I'm not harking back to that. It's an example. But what I'm saying is, would it be beneficial for United to be, 1 week it's the diamond, the next it's 4-2-3-1, then it's 5 at the back. It is chop and change. Would it be more beneficial for us to say, look, I don't mean be blindly rigid and not adapt to the game, but generally we'll set up this way with this personnel. Would that help?
I don't think it would. I just don't. We've got a malleable squad now. We've got a lot of options in different positions. We've got different players that play the same position that offer something different in nearly every position now, and I think that is the way forward. Pep does it. Pep changes his formation consistently, and he was able to win 99-point league titles. It's not a problem. The issue you have is when teams are tired, and I just think that's where we are at the minute. And we're not anywhere near that level yet still, and we shouldn't be at this point. I don't think it's not like as well for me that these system changes are completely like alien. It's not like moving from having the diamond playing 4-2-3-1. That's not that drastic a change. And
no.
The other thing I would say about it is that when we've played the diamond, Pogba's played. When we've played the 2 in midfield, it's been Fred and McTominay. These play. I take on board. We played the diamond, and Fred and McTominay played through the week, but their roles weren't that different. They just operated in a slightly different position. I don't believe that they'd have been thinking, "Oh, I'm clueless. I don't know what to do here." I'm not. I just don't buy it. I think we've been fine. I just think it is just a thing. I think we'll be better for this at the end of the year, because I do think we'll be looking at it. Pogba, Bruno, and Donny will have had their rotation. Fred, McTominay, and Matic will have had their minutes, but they won't have been killed playing that. Midfield tends to dominate, and that tends to be where games are won and lost. And I think we'll be really glad for that at the end of the year. And then same up front. I'm worried at the minute about Rashford, because we're playing him an awful lot, and he seems to be playing through an injury, and he's done that for the last couple of years, and he's shown willing, but I don't want to do that. But I think that's only because obviously Martial picked up that knock and Cavani's out now, but I expect they'll come back and we'll be able to rotate them as well. Obviously, if you play the same 11 every week and you play the same system, yeah, there's going to be a bit more of the
Familiarity.
little things. Yeah, obviously. But what is our best 11 right now? Nobody will know. Nobody, because you need to see all these players together. We need to figure out who's what. And I would say at this stage of the season, because of this season, we've been playing 2 games a week off the back of a month and a half break in between, that and a really intense end to last season. I'm just not surprised that we're having to rotate. And I think at the end of the year, we'll be glad for it, personally. Okay. United, great United teams. Ferguson's United team, the best version of United team was how United could play possession football, where Carrick would grind you to death with Scholes. We would play counter-attacking football, where we would sit deep, and then Rooney, Ronaldo, Park, or Nani would burst and kill you, and Tevez. Or we could sit deep and defend, because we have the best teams are adaptable. They always are, and they can function in different ways. We just haven't got the players at that, in every one of these positions yet. And a lot of the new good players who I think Tellers is a really good sign, I think Donny's a really good sign, and obviously Bruno's definitely a very good sign. I think Cavani adds something. They've been here for 5 minutes.
Yeah, true.
They're definitely a step in the right direction in terms of the personnel we need to be looking at. But they've been here 5 minutes, and you can't force others out of the door. One thing I appreciate, I've been very defensive here. One thing I will say, one other positive I want to just get out there in the open, so I've said it and I can move on, and I won't go on about it too much, was there were a couple of passages of play where I saw a side to United that I hadn't seen before, where we were playing through the press really effectively.
I know which one you're going to say now.
Yeah.
The Wan-Bissaka, McTominay, Bruno, yeah.
It starts with Lindelof as well. And there was another one as well where Fred does a roulette in the middle of the pitch, then cuts back by megging a player.
I don't know how that happened, by the way. Me and my dad were sat there like...
He's a good footballer.
Well...
But he is. He's not going to score goals, and that's not the be all and end all for a footballer these days in midfield.
His technique is just so questionable.
But what about that?
Is. Yeah, I've done that at 6-a-side. It does happen occasionally. It was great.
Just the City.
It was great. Don't get me wrong. It was fantastic bit of play. And that's all there is to say about it.
Just because he's not like Frank Lampard running in, tapping in little edge of the box.
I didn't particularly like Lampard. Honest to God, Lampard was never on my top 10 list. But regardless of that, I've praised Fred in the past. You said on last week's show. I'm not averse to praising him.
No, I know.
He's got his strengths and weaknesses, and I'll never say his technique's good, because it isn't. But he's a good defensive midfielder that can break a game up, sets the tempo, play a 10-yard pass. That's what he's good at.
Yeah, fair. I agree. But
okay.
Again, when a player can go in the middle of the park and do a roulette, and
it was great.
It was player. Great. But he's got that in his locker. His techniques.
Yeah, but Kieran, we also saw John O'Shea nutmeg Figo.
Yeah, one of the best players of all time. John O'Shea
and Luis Figo.
Watch John O'Shea's chip
highlights.
And tell me he is not a technically good player.
You won't get a bigger fan of O'Shea than me. Great player. But you never have him down as unbelievable technique, would you? He was all right.
No, he was good.
It's better technique than Fred. I'll say that.
That's rubbish. But
it's not.
I'm thinking about that goal. No.
All right. The day Fred scores a chip, he's not going to score it at Highbury, but at the Emirates...
He's not a goal scorer, but that's not the measure of a good technical player.
I'm on about technique, about kicking a football. Somehow, Kieran, he stood
over for you. Yeah.
He stood over a free kick every time we have the ball. Why is he stood there?
Anymore, he did for a period. He doesn't do that.
He's never going to take it. Why is he there?
I go back to the point I think I made last time. He's also not going to win the header in the box. So at least just him being there, he's going to be there to cover if the counter-attack happens, which is where you need him because he's quick. And again, where else is he going to stand? He may as well make it like he's going to shoot.
The one time he did take a free kick was at the Etihad when we didn't need him to take one. The last moment. That's
taken on board. He can't shoot, but I don't think that makes him a bad technical player. He's not, striking a ball.
That's what I'm saying, striking a ball. Not got it.
All right, so his shooting technique is off, but technically, close control, he's actually pretty good.
Okay, we'll agree to disagree.
It's for the best. No, I'm his biggest defender sometimes as well. I appreciate I probably come across defensive, but no, my wider point about playing through the press was a couple of times where we're pretty bold and was playing one-touch football or doing roulettes in the pitch. That is something that's new to me. That I think is a good thing. That if we are now going to be a bit braver about playing through the press, when we play these teams and we're not necessarily setting up to counter, I think that will be something for other teams to bear in mind. Is if we are going to have the ability, which I think we've got, but a lot of it is about the confidence to then play through it.
Yeah.
Then that's a different beast to handle. Because if we're going to set up with a four at the back, which I think he wants to transition to that bigger picture, when if he wants us to start playing like a contender, then we're going to have to be able to do that at the top level. And I think it's good to see that that's because McTominay and Wan-Bissaka aren't. They're the two players I wouldn't want necessarily playing one-touch football. But if they're going to be brave enough to do it and it comes off, then
Yeah, it can be relatively simple as well. It doesn't need to be too complicated. It's pass and move it. It's most basic, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it doesn't take the wizardry of Paul Scholes always to get through that.
When have you ever seen that clip of Paul Scholes doing it in the Champions League game? He ends up getting the goal at the end or the assist. I can't remember again who it's against, but it's
not Olympiacos. No,
yeah, and it's like 50.
The chip.
Yeah.
It's against Anderlecht.
Yeah, there's a lot of touches in the move, but the key point is he doesn't take many. It's one or two, and the trap we've too often fallen into, and I do think this is why Maguire deserves a bit more credit, is because he has stopped the whole, just holding it for the sake of it, or standing and looking right and there's nothing there, and then turning left and then going back to the keeper. That doesn't happen the way it used to. There's definitely been progress in that respect.
Yeah, it does need to be shifted quicker. I think that's
I've
the key, isn't it?
gone on here about it was a nothing game, but they were my takeaways.
It's all right. We'll get to the congested fixture list next week when we can go into it in a little bit more detail. We'll probably broaden it to the whole of the league because obviously we're coming up to Christmas. It's famously a busy period for every team. So we'll get to that next week. But for now, Kieran, thank you for your company. Pleasure as always. Glad to have you with us to dissect United's indifferent week, I suppose, but better things to come. I think you're confident that they're going in the right direction. So thank you very much for joining us.
We're playing the worst team in the league on Wednesday, and I just know they're going to turn up like, the Galacticos or something and finally turn up Sheffield. So, no, we should win. We should win.
Well, we said that last time, so expect another meme to come out if they don't. But yeah, for now, thanks for your company. We'll see you next week.
Yeah, thank you, Sean.
Thank you very much for watching and listening to this podcast. We are on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts. I think I said that with iTunes. All good podcast providers. Wherever you get your podcasts, you can find us. The website is zipsportsmedia.com, and we'll be back next week with episode 10 of season 3 of the Game of Two Halves podcast.